All right, everyone. We're excited to host our webinar. I will give it just about a minute or two before we kick off, just for everyone finishing up that meeting or that class. I think we can all take an extra 60 seconds, I'm sure, and we'll kick it off just in a few here. Seems like people are starting to join, and yeah, nothing like a Wednesday afternoon talking about budget. So I'm really excited about this. So why don't we, Alex, Tracy, I'm sure you guys look ready. So I think we're gonna jump right into this right now. Doing more with less. The main topic is budgets. It's budget season. There's a lot of decisions to be made. It's been a roller coaster over the last few years, and excited to tackle this topic: how school leaders are navigating budget cuts. And joining myself, I want to introduce two very important, very special leaders in the educational community. First is here is Tracy Dabbs. Tracy has been working with Screencastify for many years. She's the technology and innovation coordinator at Burlington-Edison School District, where she uses over 25 years of experience in technology to ensure secure, reliable access to cutting-edge digital tools. Tracy, welcome to the webinar. We're super excited to have you. And Alex. Alex is the 2025 IDEA Educator of the Year. It's a huge accomplishment. He's a Google certified trainer. He's the Director of Digital Learning and Innovation at East Moline School District in Illinois, and really driving charge for students to tackle this digital world. And both of you are making such important decisions as in evaluating different technology and evaluating different platforms, and really wanted to bring this together for you to share some of your insights and ideas on what you've seen and some of the best practices. And before we jump into it, I'll just share, since 2020 to today, it truly has been a roller coaster, right? The decisions that schools and districts are facing every year has been different. It used to have, K-12 education used to not change. It's going through the most rapid change, whether it's in your control or not, but it's something that we have to adapt to and be best positioned to it. I just got off a call where a school district is, tens of millions of dollars over budget, and other districts where they have a significant amount of capacity, but they want to really be intentional on what they choose. So it happens in every direction. And really excited to have both of you here as we tackle this and share some best practices and ideas over here. So Tracy, welcome. Alex, welcome. Would love to start off with just one thing before we jump into this. Alex, if you can share just a little bit more about how the last few months have been and what's been different this year than last year. I think just in your perspective, and then you with Tracy, would be good to just get a feel for, what's going on in the current environment right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a roller coaster, like you've talked about, Vishal, and we've seen the largest influx of cash through the ESSER funding through and beyond COVID, and a lot of that has started to dry up. And a lot of that now dictates decision-making for personnel, decision-making for programs. But we've been having a lot of conversations in leadership meetings and around the district about what that looks like for us as we continue to move forward, as we keep teaching and learning at the forefront, but also making sure that we're making sound decisions for the end of this year into next year and beyond. I think that's a really big process that I'm sure I'll talk about a little bit more as we work our way through today. So lots of conversations about those pieces. And I've been saying this a lot to people. Maybe it's not just in this space, but every day recently has felt like getting shot out of a rocket ship. There are just so many things coming our way, and we're navigating them and we're making it, but it's definitely a lot. So that's what I can share. And I'm sure Tracy's got some info on that too.
No, it's so right, Alex. So over here on the West Coast, we have had significant funding dry up for us, losing a lot of our grants in our state. Enrollment for our area is down as our cost of living is just crazy skyrocketing. So right now we're experiencing closing down buildings. We're experiencing reconfiguring the buildings we have, and we're having more than ever having to really focus on priorities and focus on what is really necessary. And that's not really been the case for us, right? So that's been kind of tricky. And then also really worrying about levy votes, right? And bond votes as people are feeling that crunch of dollars. So really having to be super careful and make those priorities really important for us. So yeah, a lot of conversations, Alex, about what's really important and what's essential.
Thanks for sharing a little bit of that background. And I'm sure, there's people that are tuning in that are going through a similar sort of setup and environment. And this is partly uncharted waters, and Alex, you talked about ESSER, that drying up or, really coming to a close, really puts a lot of emphasis on priorities, right? And not only ESSER, but if there's grants and different other funding sources. And, it's great if you can say yes to everything, right? But, that's not the world that we live in, or, that's always a easy thing to respond to, but we have to make decisions. And so with this, as we have to make these decisions, sometimes there's different frameworks that people use or different ideas that we go through to make sure that we truly invest and spend money in the things that matter the most. So, Tracy, would love to hear, what type of framework or what type of thought process you go through, and when it comes to prioritizing what really makes an impact.
So I love that in our district, I am part of the teaching and learning team. So technology is right there at the table. I'm actually a trainer and a UDL coach. And so we really focus on the UDL framework, which if you're not familiar, it's all about inclusionary practice and making sure all students have access, right? It's a really important piece for us. So we use the UDL framework to really push our decision making. If it's not helping us solve a barrier for our learners, for our educators, then it's simply not going to make the cut, right? We have to be super intentional about what it can do for us. And we have just found that, oh my gosh, especially since COVID, video has become an essential tool for us. We have to have that for our students. And I mean, we're just seeing from just research that, gosh, more than 85% of our learners prefer video or utilize video more than any other medium right now. And so putting a tool like that in our teachers' hands that's both student and teacher facing, that gives those pieces, it's just such an easy selection for us. And it solves so many of our barriers, right? So using that UDL framework, having something that puts that learner first, we just have to have that lens to help us make those selections. It's not about just what's the new and shiny thing. What's really that tool that's going to give us support for those student learning goals? That really has to be what we're all about.
Yeah, no, I think, you mentioned learner first, and that's a theme that resonates a lot with me, and with a lot of the districts that I speak with. At the end of the day, we're here for students, and to really improve their outcomes. And the one piece where you mentioned UDL, and I'm familiar with kind of the focus that Washington as a state is also putting on it. And just a quick question, Do we have a tough job you have a tough job because you're managing the teachers and you're managing the schools, the districts, all the way to the state line. And it seems like this way you're kind of drawing a parallel that helps everyone along the line, from the state level initiative on the UDL side to district level to teachers to it actually solving a true problem with inclusive learning and different learning styles. And video is a key piece of how you do that. But is that intentional, kind of drawing the connection point all the way from state to the learner first mindset?
Absolutely, right. I love that the West Coast is really embracing the inclusionary practice model and UDL. We found that it is bringing our schools together. We're having this common language. The state is actually providing grants around this work. So we actually use some grant funds to support Screencastify purchases. So it's all tying together. It doesn't feel like we're doing all these separate initiatives all the time. And tech is there not as a separate thing. It's there for the solutions for instruction. So I just love that all those pieces are so tightly connected and woven together.
Yep. Alex, would love to hear your thoughts on how you prioritize.
Yeah. At the core is teaching and learning. So we're thinking about how that's always going to impact, similar to what Tracy was mentioning and you were talking about there too. We're also really focused on how we can collaboratively make these decisions and let the data drive some of that decision making. As we're thinking about what we have around the district, how is it impacting what we can do? And in what capacity can we streamline? Can we cut back? Can we add in a place where it makes sense that's going to benefit us? So I think that collaborative piece is also really important for us. Knowing what people's perspectives are, change is hard in any capacity, but knowing rationale and clearly communicating some of those pieces when we have to make changes is also really, really important. So as we make a decision about a program or a specific instance, we really have to think about some of those pieces and kind of delineate our needs from our wants. And how can we take some of our wants and fit them into our needs, or find other places that those things can live and operate? So I echo a lot of what Tracy says, but that's what I can add in terms of a lot of the things we're thinking about too.
Yeah, and these aren't easy decisions or easy processes by any means. And it seems like a common theme is learner first on that side. And just a question of, there's a lot of new applications and actually a lot of existing platforms and products and solutions, including Screencastify, has changed a lot, right? So there's a lot of change going on in general in the market. And how are you able to stay on top of, like, what do you do to kind of stay on top of that? Because sometimes if you look at the map of all the companies, there's probably a lot of companies and it's hard to, spend time with, like, what is important to you in either, like, how do you stay on top of what's going on in the world and to be able to, like, select the option that makes sense?
So I'll jump in. It is, Alex, I don't know about you, but it is so difficult to do that. I feel like every time I turn around, there's a different thing. I'm reading I'll read a blog. I have a lot of podcasts that I listen to. I have a lot of districts that I network with. And we actually have a group that meets monthly just to talk about barriers, new tools people have heard. I'll go to conferences. I actually got to go to a conference and Vishal was there with me. But just kind of staying on top of those pieces of things that are coming out. But the big thing for us is we're looking at barriers we haven't addressed. Is there somewhere that we have this gap, right, that we need? And sometimes someone will go to a conference and come back with this great shiny thing, right? So we'll investigate and look. But it is really difficult to stay on top of those things. And a lot of them, gosh, it's sifting through the noise. I don't know, Alex, what's your take on that?
Yeah, we live in such an information-rich society where if you don't see it, it's almost gone forever because it's just stacked. Like you think of rock formations and we're like fossilized at the bottom already for some. But like you said, I'm constantly reading, trying to create my network professionally on LinkedIn and at conferences, working with our vendor partners and thinking about how we can kind of craft our tech stack in a way that is wide reaching, that is content and grade level agnostic. How can we use tools that meet the needs of all learners, regardless of language or ability or age or content area, I think is really important for us too. But I don't know, it's almost like a game for me to try and stay up on all the things. I know I was meeting with a vendor partner a couple weeks ago, and they mentioned something new that they were trying, and I had no idea that it was even in the works. So also leaning into the companies that you work with, like shameless plug, Screencastify has their new teleprompter feature, which is a game changer. I just have to throw that out there, at least for the tool that we have in the house right now. So a lot of those pieces come into play. So that's what I can add to that, Tracy.
Awesome. Well, we're very good, helpful insight. The one thing that you mentioned, Alex, that I'll kind of highlight, you said all in one. You know, we can elaborate it. It can kind of ties into this next question of streamlining and consolidating your tech stack. And truly, the analogy I like to use is you can have an amazing engine in a car, and it can do all these different things. But if it's not easy to use, or if it's not, done in a way that you don't need an instruction manual, and you can then it defeats the purpose of that, right? And so the second thing is, okay, now you make all these decisions, you make a couple decisions, like what is the value and how do you approach streamlining your tech stack, and how do you think of your tech stack in general?
I can hop in here first if that's okay. I mentioned earlier on the idea of data leading. So we're always looking at how we're using programs, how staff are using programs, how students are using programs, and then trying to qualify and quantify that with what we're seeing in the classroom. So as we take a look at how we're using those programs, that can either lead you to two very different conversations about moving forward, but consolidating a lot of things under the same roof when possible. If we have tools that we know do multiple things, it's great to live in that single ecosystem or a few ecosystems rather than being spread out all over the place. Something that I also think about here, which is really important, I do a lot of work with professional learning for staff, and there, like you said, are some tools that are really user-friendly and other tools where you have to do a lot of back-end work to get people where they need to be to feel comfortable with them, or even just play around knowing that you can't break anything, but I have to free up some time to be able to do that. So those are pieces that I really think about when we try to craft our tech stack, when we think about the different avenues and options we give people to utilize, and make sure that they know that they even exist. Because just like we talked about information falling behind, when we have new staff that come into the district, we want to make sure that they're up to speed. When we have new tools or new features that come into play, we want to communicate those and train people appropriately as well. So, Tracy, over to you.
I just have to echo what you said, Alex. The implementation of some of these tech tools is the very frequently forgotten aspect, right? They'll pick some wonderful tool they think is amazing and have no idea the implementation behind it. And that is one of the first things we always look at in our tech team is what is it actually going to take to pull this off? What's the management behind the scenes? What's the training? What's the onboarding it's going to take? And with Screencastify, oh my gosh, I have not found a video tool that is so easy for people to just jump in and use. I have kindergarten students using Screencastify. I mean, that's where we're at. It is so wonderfully engineered. And so again, just like you said, we're looking for tools that are actually going to address student needs. We know we have barriers. We have huge numbers of language learners. And just having this tool where teachers can make those visuals, it can be translated, it has the captions on it. And the thing I love about this tool is it's not just for our learners in the classroom. We send videos to our families. I use it. I just used it today to send a quick video to a teacher that needed some tech support, where in the past I would have to type out a huge long list of directions with screen clips and all these things. It was so cumbersome. In a couple of minutes, I could make a video and share out with teachers. So it's used at so many different levels for us. And it has, when we have one tool that has so many solution options, it's a slam dunk, right? So those are the pieces we really look for. And we've just found that with Screencastify. And then the tech support behind the scenes, like when we need to reach out to someone, just that instantaneous support. So, and that's a piece we really look for. And checking with other districts, what their experiences are is key, right? You don't, as a vendor, you don't want to burn bridges with a tech, with any department or any district, because people talk, right? So those were those things of finding a company with such a great reputation and keeping it so you don't have a million tools. When you have one that does so many things, it's just such a great benefit.
Well, Tracy, we appreciate the kind words, and you know, for everyone out there, this is all coming from Tracy. But no, I mean, we appreciate it. I think like we've heard a lot of where, you know, there's so many apps. It may do what they want, that, you know, it may do what the district really wants the teachers to do, or do what but if there's so many things on the menu, it's hard to select one and even actually get adoption. And what you're seeing, actually, what I've seen is companies are getting a little bit broader, right? And so they're able to solve more problems and consolidate things in general. But you know, one piece that comes up is integration, and integration in terms of workflow, in terms of, you know, it's just like any human, where if in order to solve a problem, if they have to really go out of the way and learn this whole thing to solve the problem, you know, is it like there's just not enough time or energy or mental power to do that. So it would be helpful to kind of hear that side. That's something that even as a company for us is we lean in on workflows. We have these Google Drive workflows, the Chrome extension, like the way it's designed, it's very simple because we lean in on these muscles that people already use. And oh, and by the way, it's right there. But like, talk to me about integration. Like, is that an important thing as you look at different products or even existing products, just how it ties in with the day-to-day?
I'll jump on first on this one, because this is so important for us. We're a Google district, and the integration that you have, whether it's through single sign-on, which, right, with just adding that as a Chrome extension, your Screencastify Submit, oh my gosh, I'm a huge fan. And if you don't know, that's an integration with Google Classroom that allows teachers to create a video assignment for students, taking away all the extra steps of they go to Screencastify, they have a link, they share it out. It actually makes it an assignment where the video is actually owned by the teacher themselves. So huge UDL focus, allows students to have options to share their learning. And it has been a game changer for all age groups for us. So that integration piece, like you said, helping the teacher with streamlined steps so they don't have to remember all these pieces or simply just go through those steps is so important for us. And there's already the connection with Screencastify within Google Classroom to just grab videos really quickly too. So that integration piece for us is so key, What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think in general, anything that's easy to find, it's accessible, it already fits into models and locations that you're comfortable with. I mean, I talked a little bit before about how we do that with staff, and then we have that secondary ring down where if staff are comfortable with it, hopefully we can make sure students are comfortable with it. And we know that a student at 11th grade is much different than 7th grade and much different than 1st grade. So thinking about some of those tools and how they apply in some areas, but maybe not others, and how we can embed those things in ways that are just right at our fingertips without having to dig very deep or go very far.
Simplicity. It's very hard to make things simple, is the quote that comes around. We talked about students. I actually want to, you know, adjust this question on the fly a little bit for this purpose. So, you know, as a director, kind of district level decision maker, you're managing teachers, students, and you're also managing all the way up to the superintendent and your constituents on that side. Um, you know, if there is a solution that's super valuable for a teacher, right? I think a lot of the challenge is the people who feel the pain and the need, which is maybe the student or the teacher, isn't necessarily the one making the decision, right? So it's the decision will come from a board or kind of a different group who may not actually be feeling the pain or seeing the value. Would love to hear kind of your experience of how to actually get that value communicated, or like kind of a best practice on, because there may be something that you really believe that would benefit the teachers, but it's hard to actually communicate that upward. So would love any ideas on that, because that's where students, if they feel the pain, if this can make truly a student learning impact, but it's hard to make the decision between A or B or C. And so would love any advice to the group, if you can share. And Tracy, if you want to kick it off, would be great.
So in our district, I think that an advantage we really have is making sure that tech is so tightly connected with teaching and learning that we know the pain points, we know the instruction, we know the curriculum, we're right in there. And I feel like making sure your tech team and the decision makers know the real story and can be advocates for those learners is super important, right? Having those teachers that are on those committees that can share with you how these different pieces are working. I know Alex is involved in professional learning just like I am. So we are boots on the ground in the field, training people on these different pieces. And if you have a separation where you're not in that space, I think it would be hard, right, Vishal, to advocate for those things. But when you are so tied to instruction and you see those barriers and you have a framework like UDL to lean on, those are so much easier to fight for and explain. Right. So I think it's that tie between teaching and learning and that tech team that are making those decisions and helping support that. That's a big piece for us, or those connections. Alex?
I echo a lot of those sentiments. I think, again, that collaborative process and getting people around the table, or whether it starts with surveys and moves to focus groups or some interviews or just in conversation. I know one of the best parts of my job still is that I have a lot of opportunity to get back in buildings and just be with teachers and see what they're doing. Sometimes even teaching in classrooms and working with kids or demoing something so people can see how it operates. And I think having those conversations, truly understanding the reality and thinking about how we can break down barriers and kind of clear the path for our teachers to do their job more easily, and then teachers can work with students and students can learn in a fashion that's going to be most effective, is going to be really important as I'm thinking about the proposals that I put together, and whether that means I need to put together something with numbers where I know, like, okay, we're going to have to figure out some way to massage this, to finesse this, to make it work, or if I can use some anecdotal evidence. This is what I saw, how it worked. This is what people feel and what they believe. I think when you can play on those pieces too, it's also really important, because again, it's about that balance. We know that there are times where we're going to have to make decisions that are hard. It's a lot easier to add than it is to take away, especially when you get used to or comfortable with a tool. So that's definitely something I think about too.
No, that's super helpful. And I think the collaborative process is key. And it seems like that's something that, where the message has to be shared across the board, and no less surprises are good. I mean, there's always going to be things there. Some of the schools and districts are facing some quite dramatic challenges, right? Like truly, millions of dollars being removed or being cut out on the budget, like either through, for enrollment reasons, funding sources have changed. And so, but the world is moving fast, right? And the way people learn AI with the, just advancement of where things are going, that's actually moving at a faster pace than I've ever seen it. And being in education for the last 15 years, the pace is just incredible. And incredible in terms of speed. It can be overwhelming, but it is moving forward. So in that type of situation, and maybe it may not be you directly, but if you can give some advice to our group of how do you still experiment and move things for the students that are there, even when there's this huge budget headwind. And, I think that's important because we want our students to, regardless, there are things out of their control, but to give them an environment where we're forward looking, where we are being able to lean in on capabilities that can advance their ability to learn is super important in general. But how would you think through that situation? And any advice to share would be great.
Yeah, it's that idea of how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time. And I think as long as we're taking steps forward, we know that there are sometimes going to be steps backwards, but at least we're moving toward the finish line. And that's hard because sometimes another finish line is added or the race gets longer. Like I said, and if an answer before, the idea of clearing the path, the path gets kind of rocky as we're working our way through things. So we work with a lot of partners, and we've got a couple schools that are partnered with John Deere, and we do some really cool work there. We're looking for grant opportunities and funding that we can use in some of those kind of hidden resource ways. Are there ways that we can partner with other school districts nearby or with cooperatives? We have in Illinois, a purchasing program called the ILTPP. They are a cooperative that helps bring prices down. So even as we're thinking about budgets, how can we best utilize our money with the budgets that we have? And then thinking about, we make these decisions for the short run, maybe for months ahead, years ahead. What does that longer plan look like to make sure that we can find financial stability and success? And it might shift over time, but at least you have a pathway that you're kind of seeking forward.
No, that's great, Alex. And it's the big thing for us is we just have to be really creative sometimes, right? When we find those, and for me, a video production tool is just a non-negotiable. We have to have it, right? It's just where we are with our learners and barriers that we're experiencing. And so we've utilized several different grants at the state level. There was an assistive technology grant that we were able to utilize at one year. There was a digital navigation grant. So really being creative with the different pieces that are out there. And like you were saying, Alex, teaming up with people. We team up with our migrant and bilingual teams and see how we can support them and we can support each other. And then sometimes I'm looking for multi-year deals with companies, right? Not all districts allow you to do that, but sometimes you can find some funding relief, right, with a few signing up for a few years at a time. And there's even like intervention grants or different pots of money in your district, whether it's for your title or your LAP programs, things like that. The thing that's so wonderful about this tool is it's not set for a certain grade level or for a certain content. It's just one of those overarching accessibility tools. So sometimes that can give you a lot of flexibility on how you can find funding to support it, right? And the nice piece is when you get people bought in, you don't have to be the one fighting for it. They're fighting for it with you, right? Because you're just hearing that here are some of those things that just people are so reliant on. And you're right, Alex, when you start to get something that people are really used to using, it's hard to pull those things back. So sometimes creativity, we just really have to be creative on how we're able to find funding.
No, it's super helpful. I think it's, and this kind of leans in here. It's one thing is the approach that I take is, we're a partner. There is no, with some of the companies, it's not really, and I really think that's what's there. The technology will always change, and companies might be, a couple months away from doing this, and we can get into our roadmap, but it's truly finding a partner because it's the intangibles that make a lot of difference, which is someone going to be there if you to support you in a need that is not purely defined. Every school, every district is different, and that's one thing. It's hard to be a one size fits all type of approach. So I think like that really resonates. Couple things that I've come across in general is, we talk about consolidation and simplifying. But it's taking a longer term viewpoint, right? If we're doing something, if you're working or trying something out for 1 year or 6 months, and it's hard to really, you have to give it a chance of success in order for it to be successful. And it's just, sometimes we'll have districts that will want to try us for 6 months or a very short period of time. And, my analogy is kind of like, we can have the best party in the world, but you're responsible for sending the invites. And if no one comes to the best party, it's hard to have that designation. But I think like, the long-term viewpoint is important, and how that ends up flowing with the overall vision, it seems very much there. So any comments on that, or just wanted to share that anecdote?
Yeah,
No,
makes
it
me
is.
think. Oh, go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say, you're right. It's that implementation piece that districts usually don't think of, right? That tool just doesn't get used just magically on its own. Go ahead, Alex.
It makes me think of the implementation dip. You get to that bottom part, and that's when things get really hard. And that's when sometimes you make decisions to walk away, when it's like, we need to fight through to get to the other side. And
Yep.
sometimes that's time. Sometimes that's training. Sometimes that's just getting used to it and letting it run its course for a little while. So that definitely comes to mind when you mention those comments.
Yeah, no. So kind of the last thing we talked about in terms of, you shared a lot of different ideas. And it sounds like, if there's a solution that really resonates, that's important. And if it can align with, the full K through 12 spectrum or different pockets, there could be so many different pockets of funding to support that. Tracy, you mentioned grants, and, Alex, you mentioned also in a similar way, some innovation funding sources. Anything else that you want to add to this? Any other ideas, or is that kind of like, just in terms of finding some resources to be able to continue to move forward in a world where there is a reduction?
I think a big piece, and I know Alex echoed this several times, it's that collaboration between different groups within your district and outside. Sometimes you might not even realize there's pockets of money that are available to support this. And it has such far-reaching support for so many students and so many subjects. So really making sure you're networking and find out, how are other districts finding money for this, right?
Yeah.
But really reaching out and collaborating is a super powerful piece.
I think something that I've learned in my professional career, but also some work in nonprofits, is that you don't know if you don't ask or don't try. And sometimes you're going to try and maybe you won't be awarded that grant, or sometimes you'll ask and the answer will be no. And although those things will be discouraging, you have to continue to forge ahead. And again, keeping teaching and learning and like kids and teachers at the forefront of this. When you do get that yes, it's going to feel even more sweet as we think about like how we fund this, or this new cool program, or this new task that we're trying to take on. So I think that's one piece that I think we're not doing this work alone. We're not the only ones dealing with this, although sometimes it can feel that way in our district as one person or a small team. It's happening across the country, whether you're in Washington State like Tracy, whether you're in Illinois like me, or somewhere else in the country.
No, very, very, I think that if you don't ask, you don't get, right? And the worst case scenario is usually the current state. So, that's also a bit very helpful, simple but helpful advice. And on that, firstly, super grateful, Alex and Tracy, for you to share, some insights, some wisdom. And there's a lot of difficult decisions that are going on. There's facilities that are closing. There's people that are losing their jobs. There's real items, and it's, being able to manage that while also focusing in on the students is not it's easy to say, but it is challenging to actually do. And right now is, as we all know, is a very busy time to make decisions and to see if we can uncover some of those opportunities. And given the timing right now, right, we're in May, mid-May, if there is someone that is going through this process, which I think a lot of people are, and as they're going through evaluating, what next year looks like, what things to prioritize, like any overall perspective or advice you can share, given the timeline right now, where, hey, maybe they haven't had a chance to collaborate with everyone and really align, and it's good for next year, but for right now, any advice on that side?
I think right now is a great time to put together kind of your list and your timeline. And if you're feeling like you need to kind of gather all your thoughts, that way, when you come back in the fall or late summer, or once everybody's back in the building, you can start to audit this or take a look at that or get people around the table to have those conversations. This is a great time to do some of that behind the scenes planning and prep to then launch some of those things in the fall. And like we've talked about throughout this entire webinar, there will be continued uncertainties, and there may be things that we thought were going down a path, and then the path directly changes. And we're going to have to turn on a dime to account for those things as well.
Yeah, big thing for us is keeping our priorities, keeping our learners first, right? And so when we look at our UDL framework, when we look at some of the barriers that we know students are going to come across, we have our matrix with our UDL, and the places where I can plug in Screencastify as a digital solution, it is peppered throughout the framework, right? It is repeated in every one of the principles and comes up over and over. So finding those things that really do leverage what you need with one tool, that's the piece for me. Is we're super cheap, right? We have to be tight purse strings. So finding something that really is worth the dollars, oh my gosh, I'm going to cling to it. And it's one of those where we have preschool all the way up through our students in special ed. We're still supporting through age 22, right? Our entire spectrum of all of our students finding access with this tool. So it's keeping those priorities, right? And remembering that our focus really has to be on our learners. And when you find something that has so many solution points for you, that's a piece that you can fight for. So keeping those priorities is just, we have to do that in these times that are just going to get a little bit rockier probably before they get smoother. And really being able to find those ways that we can support our learners and be able to justify that is going to be really important.
It's very refreshing to kind of hear, the way both of you explain your thought process and strategies. And, there's some nuances, but a lot of it is very similar, right? It's priorities, it's collaboration, it's having a real game plan. So we are focused on improving the learning outcomes. I think partnership is key. And my item is, and kind of what I'd share with everyone for this is, if there's any questions or hesitations, or, hey, requests for flexibility from any of the partners, even Screencast, it doesn't hurt to ask. And I think that's the biggest thing, is really, for us, our approach is partnership. So talk to us like a partner. We're happy to help in any manner, whether or not we're actually working with you on a formal level or not. I think for us, it's just super important to help on the education side as a whole. There's some, challenges, there's changes, but this education is such an important part of the future. Outside of health, it's tough to argue the second most important thing, which I believe is education. So really, Alex, Tracy, thank you so much for joining. We got a couple questions, but I think we answered them as we were going through this. I try to feed them in our conversation here. And, really appreciate both of you joining. I think reach out to Screencastify. We're happy to, put you in touch with the right people, including our customers, and connect the dots if there's something that resonated from either Alex and Tracy. But, I had a great time. It's always fun talking budget and numbers and dollars. But I think the main thing is really aligning with what our students really need, and making those priorities and tough choices is going to be part of the deal, especially this year and the years to come. Well, thank you, everyone. And Alex, Tracy, any final words?
Thanks for having us, Vishal. Everybody, thanks for listening to us. And we're all doing important work, so continue to trudge forward and do it.
Thanks so much. This was a pleasure. And everybody, I know it's super stressful. Hang in there. We know this is the right work that we're doing, and reach out. Let's support each other. We're always, you always hear we're always better together. So let's make sure we're reaching out and collaborating. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you.